This is Motivation. I'm Lori Joy Kingwell.
And I'm Chrissy Van. We're two dreamers on two wheels inspired by our community.
And celebrating the voices we're just lucky enough to discover along the ride. So if not already, like, subscribe, follow along, do what you gotta do to not miss an episode.
When you fire up a motorcycle, the engine starts to whir, purr, or growl. The pistons move up and down, driven by explosions of fuel-air mixture that has been ignited by a spark. Even when idle, there is constant motion going on beneath the tank. Intricate systems working together, connected to propel the rider in motion. Our bodies and minds work in the same fashion. Even at rest, our brains and bodies humming, purring, or growling away. Our minds and our bodies are a complex system constantly adapting to psychological, social, and biological factors. So today we're diving into our body-brain connection with our amazing friend and fellow rider, Rayna Milne, who has worked extensively with animals and humans alike. She's worked as a yoga practitioner, doula, learned animal massage, which led to an adventure of massaging horses in Italy for a time, and is now a registered massage therapist to us humans, and is currently working on her master's in counseling. In Rayna's words, she has always been interested in learning more about people, their inner workings, and how these are connected to, as she puts it, their earth suit. So today we're talking about Rayna's journey, learning about human brain-body connection, where she will share why we need both our fight, flight, and rest digest systems, and why one shouldn't be prized over the other. This is the Motivation.
Well, hey there, love. Thanks for joining us, Rayna.
Thank you for having me. Can I just say, I would totally listen to an audiobook narrated by Chrissy Van.
I'm saying.
That was
amazing. Saying, right?
It was the growl off the top, I feel.
Just lovely. Just lovely. I feel inspired already.
Making it all up as I go along.
No.
So it's amazing having you here. And Rayna, I feel like you and I were meant to meet up and be friends no matter what, not just through riding. Kind of crazy fun facts about Rayna and I is we met at a dog park, and your beautiful pup adopted Ever, right, from Vietnam. And I think she'd only been, in Canada a couple of days, very, very shy. She came over to me, wanted to have love and pets. And then you and I bonded, traded numbers. I went over to a girlfriend's house right afterwards. We found out that we are full mutual friends. You and I were supposed to sit across from each other at her wedding. And just at the last minute, we didn't. And then we met at this dog park. And then all of a sudden found out that we both rode motorcycles, and then started going to our Lita meetups and bonded over that. And then realized that we both have this like deep love for the body brain connection, and then bonded over that. It was one of these like, oh, we were meant to become friends, and we were meant to be in each other's lives in some capacity. Right. And one of the things that I noticed when we were kind of deep diving into the info you were giving us is a lot of your kind of connection went back to childhood, which for me as well, early childhood is what I do for a living. And I've always, even as a young person, just absolutely loved children and paid such close attention to human behavior. But yours seems to have started around your deep love and affection and care for animals. And I just want to kick it off with talking about that, of what drew you to that, I guess, that aspect of feeling that nurture towards animals and wanting to really care for them, stray ones. Tell us more about that to kick it off.
So I grew up in Malaysia in a much warmer climate than where we are now. And we always had things like, passing through our yard and sometimes coming into our house. And it was always just interesting for me as a child to watch these little beings. And in the house, it was mostly like little, you could call them geckos. And it was just very interesting to watch them go about their day and not be super bothered by us and not be afraid of us. And then when we went outside, my father actually had a monkey as a pet for a short time.
Stop.
Yeah. So we had this ginormous, like the size of a Vancouver, like apartment, basically, yay, Vancouver, a huge cage. And so that was present. And then when the monkey sadly passed away, bunnies were put into that cage. So I was just surrounded by animals from a very young age, and just left. This is going to sound weird, but like kind of left alone with them to just be a kid and like, you know, converse or play with animals. I guess we obviously had friends as young kids, but I was just surrounded by animals all the time. And I remember when we moved to Canada, we moved in with my father's parents, his mother at that time. And she had this wonderful house right on the lake in Ontario. And again, just like all kinds of wild animals there. Robins were very much a staple in my house because we had this beautiful bay window. And sadly, a lot of robins especially would crash into the window. And they didn't all die. This is a happy story. They didn't all die. On impact.
Not leading with tragedy.
Yeah, not
they
leading
many
with
live.
tragedy.
It's like first the monkey, now the robin.
Yeah. Everything passes. That's the lesson there. Everything is in our lives for a short time, and we have to enjoy it until they pass. Sadly, the window cut some birds' lives short. But I would often find them outside just kind of stunned, and I would bring them inside, and I had a little cage for the birds and the ones that, you know, obviously weren't going to make it. My lovely father, bless his very much alive soul, he would drive us to the local vet and pay ridiculous amounts of money to have a common robin just euthanized humanely. And it was just like a lovely moment, I think, between my father and I as well, of this connection we had over a care of animals. And he's a quiet man. I'm a fairly quiet person as well. So it was like this unspoken connection that we had together that was probably fostered a lot of my connections with animals and people later on. I just always felt more comfortable around animals. It was like this nice, happy coexistence.
I love one of the things you said there. I mean, obviously, as a child and growing up in that way, you had this insatiable curiosity about them. But on top of that, one of the words you used when you're talking about being in Malaysia, and you said conversing with them. So tell me a little bit about how deep that connection or that bond was growing, and maybe the similarities that you see about how you can connect with a person is how you're connecting with these animals.
When you are sharing space with another being, and in my case as a child, it was a lot of animals. If you are both kind of comfortable in your own bodies and sharing the space together, then it's a really nice energy of coexistence and trust, and you know, there's an enjoyment as well of each other's company, which is really nice. And there was this really cool stillness that I kind of just noticed in animals. And as I got older, I noticed it less and less in people in general. So that's, I think, when I moved from an interest in animals to people, because everyone thought I was going to grow up to be a veterinarian because I was just so obsessed with animals and like nursing them back to health, taking care of them. Yeah, everyone thought I was just destined to be a vet. I thought I was destined to be a vet. And then I took like super basic level biology in high school, and I was like, what?
You're like, nope. Absolutely not.
No. I don't like, nope. I can't do this. But I knew I wanted to be involved in healthcare in some way or another. And I also knew I really enjoyed being around people. So I think my initial connections with that stillness within animals, I just wanted to kind of extend it into my connections with people. And that's why I started as a yoga teacher and with meditation teaching. And then the same kind of experience happens when you're working with an expectant mother and sometimes an expectant father as well. There's this real amazing connection to witness between a mother and her baby as they go through their stages. And there's this really lovely stillness that happens during that period of time. And so it's just nice to be present for that and to honor that with someone and to also be a source of strength for them when they need it, you know, when physically as well as like mentally, emotionally, especially as a doula.
Sounds like from such a young age, you were dialed in to how beautiful, like you said, just the being, paying attention to the being and the small nuances that come from essentially like their body in many ways as well. And you now being a massage therapist, is that something that, you know, you feel as though has constantly been a bit, maybe a bit of the bridge, it sounds like, or is the body really?
Oh, that's a big question. I feel like we're just so often disconnected from our bodies. And if we're going to stop and pause, our bodies can actually tell us quite a bit about what's going on in our minds. And if we can tune into that, then that is a connection that I feel is very beneficial. And I'm speaking very generally here because some individuals have experienced certain things where they have 110% really kind of very purposefully disconnected from their bodies. They will also become disconnected from the sensations that the body sends the brain of like, you know, I'm not enjoying this. This isn't great for me. So headaches, for example, constant headaches are the body's way of telling us that something isn't right, something isn't going well, and there's a dis-ease. So it doesn't have to be something super grand. It's just these little signals that we kind of miss, I feel, these days.
Speaking of signals, I hear sirens.
Yeah, welcome to Peace Band.
It's like your body.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I was like, I feel one with that sound. It tied in beautifully to what you were saying there, actually, because it is so true. As you say that, I hear it so loud and clear because I'm so guilty of that. You get caught with the go, go, go of life. The brain is chattering away. And I've even come to you yourself, Rayna, where I've openly said before we start treatment, things have been very hectic. And I know I'm out of alignment because I feel it from body to brain, basically. And normally by the time it's gotten to that point, the body is screaming. So the impact can be incredibly profound if you decide to ignore that. I mean, would that be correct? You ignore it, eventually your body's going to shout at you?
Yeah, 100%. 100%, because you can only ignore it for so long. And then at one point, it's going to send you a really big message, which isn't usually very much fun to receive.
No. It's like the whisper and then the like nudge. And then it's like the punch upside the head.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Yeah. But so one of the things is what have you learned in all of those different dynamic experiences, working with animals, working as a doula, working in yoga, now working as a massage therapist? What are some of the things that you have plugged into your life that you, from what you've learned, to make sure that you're listening at the whisper?
Okay, so I definitely do not do this every day. I love to aim to do this every day, but from the moment I open my eyes, I just try to breathe for a little bit and resist the temptation to start doing. And that, I feel, has made a big difference, especially over these last 2 years where we've all gone through quite a lot of stress, I feel. And just those maybe 5 minutes, less, more sometimes, just to kind of like take stock and feel my body again, because I've been asleep. So I've been totally somewhere else, like on grand adventures. And then I wake up and before my mind starts working on what I have to do or processing what I might have to do, I guess. I just try to take stock and like focus on the breathing and be in my body.
That one I relate to so much. We had an episode about it toward the end of last year, and I'm in recovery, but I had not realized how much chronic stress had built up in my mind and my body. And I was burnt out so badly. And I've really started to actually do exactly that, because what was essentially happening is a lot of my burnout was related to my profession. And so the minute I was getting up, because my employment starts very early in the day, it was like I'd open my eyes, alarm would go off, I was on my email immediately. Yeah. And so and then I was starting to notice that sick feeling in my gut that wasn't keeling me over, but was just this constant nag, if I can put it that way. And so as I finally identified what was going on, which really was the giant thwap on top of the head of being like, hello, your body's been screaming at you, because I really got to that point of exhaustion. I have integrated that wake up and take those 5 minutes. I do set a timer for 5 minutes where I know this is just my focus for the day, relax the mind, and it has changed the course of my days exponentially. So it really does prove something that we say here often. Even a tiny shift like that can help improve your relationship between brain and body.
Yeah. I think just our overstimulation in our current times is getting just so rampant that we're not giving ourselves the time to just kind of be, without any kind of input or output. So that sounds great. And I'm so glad that you've noticed the difference as well. That's super, super cool.
It's because I surround myself with awesome people like you.
I would add an extra challenge and see if you can try to do the same thing at night before you go to sleep. Because that's often when I'll notice it, like after a day of doing, I'll notice it. I just want to keep my brain busy right until the time I fall asleep. So whether that's reading a book or watching all 6 seasons of Queer Eye, I just want to keep busy. I love that show. But yeah, and I do notice the second I put the book down or I turn the Netflix off, my brain will start to pick up on like, oh man, like your shoulders are actually kind of sore. And there's this sensation happening here in your wrists, or just little things will come to the surface. And I feel like it's important to listen to those, even if you don't do anything about it right away, but just to kind of listen to what your body is telling you, especially during this time of the year. It's January and everyone's setting all these great new intentions, although I feel like that's decreased as, it started in 2020 and now we're in 2022. And so I feel like people are less likely to be making like super incredible New Year's resolutions, as we like to call them. But I think it's important to realize that, every moment is a moment to start again, to try to tune in. And it's not an opportunity that you need to think of has been lost for you. It's not something to beat yourself up over in terms of, oh, if I just caught this sooner. It's like, yeah, but it's cool. Like we caught it now and we can work with what's going on right now. And then we can hopefully take steps to make sure it doesn't happen as intensely, as frequently in the future. But, let's be honest, nobody's perfect. And we're not going to have those 5 minutes every morning or those beautiful transition moments between activities every single day. So we just do the best we can. Like it's just an adventure, right? All of it is just an adventure.
Exactly. I always say, I'm like, none of us really know what we're doing. So just lean in and see where you go.
We're just making the best guesses we possibly can with the information that's available to us.
Yeah,
that's really it.
So Rayna, when we started this off, I mentioned in the intro there that you have such an interest in the connection between our brains and our earth suit. I could say it a million times because I love the analogy of us as an earth suit. Uh, but in all seriousness, I know one of the big messages that you want to convey is about why we need both our fight, flight, and rest digest systems and why one shouldn't be prized over the other. So, for those that may not be familiar, can you educate us on what those are and why they're important?
Sure. So a lot of people commonly kind of understand it as fight, flight versus rest or digest. And so it's sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. And anything that you have to tell your body to do is kind of, well, I don't know if I want to explain it that way, but when we slip into like a parasympathetic or a rest and digest kind of mode within our bodies, then we're just relaxing and letting the things happen that will just happen naturally without our having to instruct the body to do it. So our heart beating, for example, or our digestive system. Those are things, those are events that are going to continue in your body and have to continue in your body without you, mentally being aware of it and always having to say, okay, now we got to do this. Now we got to do this. Whereas like our physical, you can think of it as our physical movements. I'm telling my body to like raise my hand or move my arm in this way or turn my head. And if I don't send that signal, then unless there's some kind of divergency or some kind of, again, dis-ease happening within the body, then nothing's going to move really. So when we need to get stuff done, we're kind of accessing the fight or flight or sympathetic nervous system. And there's just been so much talk about like, oh, you got to calm down your fight or flight. You got to like just really try to not operate within that system as well. But we need that system. We need to accomplish things and we need to function in ways that our rest and digest system or parasympathetic nervous system are not going to allow us to do. I think the problem comes when we are overstimulated and our fight or flight system is overstimulated by things that really shouldn't trip it up. And Lori will know this from the amazing work that she does on Joy in the Home, is that we are so used to operating in fight or flight that the smallest thing tells our brain that we're in danger and we have to move and we have to take action. And so there's parts of our brain that are kind of like, they don't really understand the degree of severity that's required. And so sometimes like an upsetting email or something that doesn't seem trivial, but kind of is in the grand scheme of things, will totally set off our fight or flight systems. And then the body reacts in the same way as if it's something catastrophic. So as this kind of builds up, then we are experiencing more difficulty in bringing things back down. And I think that's the major problem right now going on for most of society, I would say, is we're just so kind of amped up in fight or flight. But like you said, we need both, kind of like the gears on a motorcycle. You need to start in one before you get to the other, and you need to move smoothly, ideally, between all five, or if you're really lucky, six, to function properly. And so that's kind of the idea of why we need both, is because we need to move, we need to take action, but we also need to rest and we need to recharge as well. So I think the key is really finding the balance between the two kind of ways of being, and not, because you can't be a sloth either, right? Like I've done this, for days, just like been a sloth, and that doesn't feel great either. That starts to feel really uncomfortable within the body as well when we're not moving a whole lot, and that changes things too. So we can't stay in either one for long periods of time.
Well, and that's what I was going to follow up with. What happens if you're running in a prolonged state where it's imbalanced so heavily on one side of these?
Well, I think we're all, especially, I I'm pretty sure that the three of us here know what it's like to run.
Look at the world you're looking at.
Yeah. Yeah, we know it's like what we talked about earlier. Like we're just going to get a big slap in the face and the body is going to tell us you can't do this anymore, you know? And I guess if we take the rest and digest to the extreme, then eventually you're actually going to have difficulties moving your body. Like if we take it again to the very extreme, atrophy can happen of muscles where they start to kind of waste away a little bit. So you get a little bit of weakness first and then atrophy. And this takes a really, really long time. But yeah, that's kind of the extreme in either way, is you are going to be stopped by your body. And it's not comfortable in either way, I would say. You think about the bones as well. Like if you're not impacting the bones, you know, like moving the body and providing some force on the bones, then they're also going to become brittle as well. And that can lead to future, I don't want to get morbid, but like, you know, this obviously takes a long time, but it's going to slow you down and eventually stop you either way, whether it's fight or flight or rest and digest. It's not going to be good.
And if you've got that, if you go into that place where you're, you know, the sloth-like mode for too long sort of thing, and not that I shouldn't say sloth-like mode, because it's like we spoke to, it's a good thing for you. But if you stay in that too long, you don't have purpose. You're not being active in any capacity in your day where you're achieving anything at all. And when there's that lack of purpose and where there's a lack of connection for mental health wise, you start then gearing towards things like depression. But then if you're overstimulated and you stay there too long and you don't come to a baseline after a stressor. So say like I drove home, like I was an angry driver. I used to be. I've worked on this a long time, and I wouldn't come to a baseline. So I'd still be agitated and aggravated after that drive. Right. And now I go into work and I'm working with children, and one of the children does something that, you know, I was, you know, a frustrating thing or triggered me in some way. Well, I didn't come back to a baseline after my drive to work. So I'm still at a heightened state. And now that child that say threw the pencil across the room, that normally would have been like, hey, I'll just go over and redirect. Now I'm in a correct and I want to correct because I'm a heightened state. Now I'm stressed and I'm heightened. That's, you know, now I go home. Now and I still haven't gotten a baseline. And I've come home and now, you know, something my partner said set me off. And it's this continual high stressor staying at that fight, flight, freeze versus if it's one of those things where if let's say I brought myself down to a baseline after that drive and I was just like, whoof, I let that get to me, or there was no real reason to get upset over that, but I recognized what I was feeling and I brought it down by say breathing, or I took some sort of step between getting my brain and body to a baseline. When that child threw the pencil there for work, it would be a separate experience. And it probably wouldn't frustrate me at all, sort of thing. But even like the stressors, like when Rayna said, it's a good thing, that need to get something done or it recognizes that I'm not crazy about driving. I'd rather not be driving. So maybe that's something letting me know to take action to get a bike or walk or do something different. But you can use that as a form of communication for yourself. Same way as that communication to go to the parasympathetic, where it's like rest, digest, slow down, of when you're just like, oof, I'm at a heightened state. I'm trying to get baseline. It's really difficult. We'll recognize that as it's time to slow down. And it's time to take, say maybe a full day where you just allow yourself to be sloth-like and kind of ebb and flow within that. Does that make sense, Rayna? The way I've said it? That was a jargon.
No, it's never jargon. Nothing that comes out of your mouth is jargon.
Well, lots would disagree with that, but I hear. Thank you. Appreciate you.
One thing I agree with everything you said 100%. But one thing I do want to point out is that elevated SNS does not have to be a negative thing either. Yeah. And I know we're using examples of like a stressful drive to work, receiving bad news or something that triggers you. But elevated SNS can also be from, and I've done this before, I've gone on like an awesome motorcycle ride, like so amazing. I'm going fast for me. And, like it's a bit of a rush, like maybe it's not even going fast. Maybe it's just navigating traffic within this city on your motorcycle. And when I go through traffic in this city, maybe this isn't great, but I think of it as like the most important video game of my life.
Yes. 100%.
Great way to put it.
Yes.
Like, I am like fully engaged, and I am like in the best city rides I find where I don't have an open stretch of road that I can just kind of open it up on. And the best city rides, I almost enjoy those more sometimes because everything feels so tactical. So my fight or flight system is totally activated, but I am having the best time ever. And then sometimes I would go from that state to work. And so my SNS is still really elevated, and I'm on this crazy endorphin high and everything, and my body's all jacked up. I was just trying to survive like Vancouver traffic on two wheels. And then if I walk into a different situation where my fight or flight, like you were saying, isn't going to be the best thing, and I haven't taken the time to come back to baseline, I'm totally going to interact with someone else very, very differently than if I had come back to baseline, for example. Because once I arrive to work, I don't need to be in fight or flight anymore. I don't need to be that elevated. I don't need to be that excited. I need to be in a different space. And so there's again this ebb and flow of shifting through the gears, shifting through like the two different systems, and there's more systems as well. But yeah, it doesn't have to be something negative. It's just the way our body works. Like when we need things to be elevated so that we're on and attuned and paying attention and ready to act, that can also be like a really amazing thing too.
I think I'm so glad you mentioned that. Exactly. Or if something's important, like you've got, if you're public speaking or something that brings upon that hyper focus, and it's important. And that's the thing that's going to actually allow you to, hyper focus into the information that you need at that moment. Because your brain's going, I got to go through this filing cabinet of like, what do I need for this moment? Click, click, click sort of thing. And so it can be a beautiful thing. I think we just, as people, don't really understand it or know how to use it. And so I think my examples always go to like something super stressful, because we essentially are at a place in the world right now where we live in that space of high stressors, and we're strong, and your blood pressure is up. It affects so many parts of your physical and mental well-being, and we're seeing the effects of that. So I'm so glad you did point out that once again of utilize that fight, flight, or freeze for yourself in these really beautiful, beneficial moments within your day that can just really elevate you and get you moving to take care of, do the things that are good for you.
As we said, we are gifted this earth suit. But the thing I find so fascinating is that you get any other cool gadget in the world, and before you operate it, you generally do a lesson or read a manual. Yet we own this body that's so complex and has all these features, but the majority of us are walking around with a lack of understanding. Going back to what I said earlier about burnout, for example, where I couldn't even recognize the state of heightened stress that I was in. And as we speak about the current time in the world now, most of us would agree that the majority of the populace are most likely out of balance. So Rayna, you've immersed yourself in the study of the body, the mind. For a layman that's basically, let's say, paint a picture of mid-30s, hasn't read the manual on their earth suit, what type of resources would you recommend, or essentials that you would say to have on board to start having this understanding? Because everything that you've shared, and I know it's something we talk about a lot here too, is when you have that recognition and that awareness. So with Lori's example of the driving and not getting back to baseline and wanting to do so, it's the awareness that's going to allow you to do that. So what type of resources do you recommend?
Do you mean resources to kind of tap into more awareness?
Yeah, definitely. Like I know Lori was talking about before some incredible books you guys have shared. So is there one that you were kind of like, whoa, this just changed my whole perspective?
Oh, I don't think there was one, sadly, but I will say this, and this might not be the popular opinion, but we are so we are so trained to look outside of ourselves for the manual, as you call it, and for knowledge. And I think for many people who might, be in that heightened state already, number one, it could just be like, oh, one more thing to read that I like have to do to like take care of myself. And so I think the best thing I can recommend is just closing your eyes and like, just even, I'd be curious if we don't have our cameras on, but I would just be curious if both of you closed your eyes right now and if you picked up on anything from your bodies, and you definitely don't have to share it, but
My left hip. I've also realized I do have to pee.
Oh, yeah. So it's like those things are always in the background, right? That nothing has to be groundbreaking in terms of awareness. Just little tools like that, every so often, just close your eyes and kind of listen if anything speaks to you. Speaks.
I love that you put it that way.
I love it. Speaks to you.
It's all that time with the robins. You have the musical tonation,
Yeah.
I love that because that's not the automatic where my brain went, and you're so right. It's exactly what you're trying to explain to us here. Listen to your body. Listen to your mind.
Like stop over. If I were going to be like kind of corporal about it, I would say like stop taking in information and just listen to the information that's already there, if you can. And if you can't, then you can seek out ways to do it. And for some people, that's getting quiet in nature. For some people, that's listening to music. For other people, it's doing a task that is very repetitive, maybe some kind of craft or something. For some people, it's cleaning, And
I wish that was mine.
When you just go into this kind of mode where you don't actually need to think, then those little whispers might get a little bit louder. And I do find that when you feel like you're super immersed in something and you just can't kind of clear your head and get out of it, a nice thing to do is to literally take a step back from whatever it is. So for those of us working on computers for great amounts of time, like literally just turn away from the screen and look at something different, because that actually changes how things are received within your brain, all the signals that are going to your brain. So if you just like shift attention for a moment, then the brain also shifts a little bit too. It doesn't have to be a very long period of time, but we get so close to things and we get so focused on one little thing. And there's many studies that show that our long-sighted vision is really suffering these days and in like recent generations too. Like our eyesight is actually changing because we're only looking at things really, really close up instead of stepping back and kind of taking in all of it.
Oh, so that's a really powerful statement. Like I understand the actual logical side of what you're saying, but in a bigger, when you pull that back, you're like, yeah.
So just physically taking a step back or shifting attention to something in the distance. That's probably the best tool I can give you that doesn't require you seeking out any extra resource or spending any money.
Well, what's our maintenance? I forgot what the hell it's called.
Motivation
maintenance. You just maintenance the shit out of that.
There you go.
Hell yeah, you did.
You got a quote for us, Rayna?
A quote. Oh, I did not come prepared with a quote.
Do you have a wise word you want to say that will be forever quoted?
Forever. Oh my gosh.
Whoa, pressure.
Yeah. Okay. This one is something I feel really connected to recently. And it's, what is the more beautiful question?
I like that.
I really wanted to let that hang in the air.
I started thinking of all the things that I questioned. And then I was just like, oh yeah, there's always a more beautiful version to ask yourself.
So in those moments where you feel just overwhelmed or someone's annoyed you, it's like before you respond or before you say something to yourself about how you're behaving, just like, what is the more beautiful question here?
Well, my friends, that is the motivation.
You've just listened to the Motivation Podcast with your host, Chrissy Van, and me, Lori Joy Kingwell.
Thanks for joining us along the ride. We've got new episodes dropping every Monday, and we're all about community. So follow us on Instagram at Motivation Podcast and visit our website at themotivation.com.
And in the meantime, tanks full and full throttle.